Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for coming for this webinar. And welcome to the international webinar, which is jointly organized by the Association of Academies and Societies of Sciences in Asia, or ASA, and the Indonesian Academy of Sciences, or IP, supported by the Inter-Academy Partnership, or IAP, and the Academy of Social Sciences in Australia, ASA. And a special welcome to Professor Armida Ali Shahbana, who is with us in this special occasion in this webinar. We are grateful that you will be able to come to join us for this afternoon webinar. And in this occasion, let me convey our grateful appreciation to ASA, IAP, ASA, the organizing committee of the webinar, that we could realize this webinar series 2 on this theme of access to digital scholarly publications. And also that our thankful and appreciation to the audience who's coming to share the concern of the theme. So the series 3 of the webinar is publication and dissemination of digital scholarly communication. As I mentioned in the previous webinar, this webinar actually planned at the end of 2019. Due to the pandemic, IP then decided to realize this webinar in 3 series, starting on March and then April, and after that, this is the last one. Thank you for coming, and we appreciate your support that you coming for all the webinar. First, allow me to put forward the term and condition of the webinar that can be seen from the screen. So the most important one, the organizing committee will switch off the speakers of the attendees during the presentation. And please write down your question and answers. Your questions and your comments through the Q&A button, not from the chat box. While in the speaker room, the participants can raise hands or directly ask the question or give comments to the speakers. So the term and condition, that is the most important one, and we would like to ask you to switch off the speakers if you don't need to speak through this webinar. The program for today's webinar series 3 is the greetings from the president of IP and also the president from ASA. And then after the welcoming remarks and congratulatory remarks, so we have a keynote speech from Professor Armida Ali Shahbana. And then after that, we would like to ask her to open this webinar. And after that, greetings and keynote speech. Now, and then we'd like to just take this moment for a short picture of this webinar with all the attendees and participants. And after that, we could share and start the webinar session 1, and after that, webinar session 2. And after that, we will have a Q&A after the session 1 and session 2. And after that, wrap up. And after wrap up, we will have recommendation, what we should do later after this webinar. And after the wrap up, after the recommendation by Professor Myling Uy Gardiner, so we will have the closing from the presidents. So this is the today's program of the webinar. To start with, so shall we invite Professor Satrio Sumantri Brojonegoro, the president of IP, to welcome all the participants in this webinar. So Professor Satrio is the president of the Indonesian Academy of Sciences. Please welcome Professor Satrio.
Good afternoon and a warm welcome to the ASSA IP International Webinar on Digital Scholarly Communication. To the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Secretary of ESCAP, the President of ASA, the Executive Board of ASA, honorable speakers, committees, colleagues, and participants. It is an honor for me to welcome you once again in this webinar series with a theme of publication and dissemination of digital scholarly communications. This webinar is organized by Indonesian Academy of Sciences, IP, and Association of Academies and Societies of Sciences in Asia, ASA, supported by Inter-Academic Partnership, IAP, and the Academy of Social Sciences in Australia, ASA. Our special appreciation to the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and the Secretary of ESCAP, Professor Amida Salsi Halisabana, who could spend her time and concerns in this webinar. Although we understand that she is busy in her Bangkok office. Welcome, Professor Amida. She's also an IEP fellow. We're also grateful to our institutional partners, those mentioned above, in realizing this event, as well as the respective speakers, moderators, advisory and organizing committees, colleagues, and participants. Without the support and contribution from all of you, it will be impossible to organize this event smoothly and successfully. The webinar is designed into 3 series, which the first was implemented on March 31st, 2021, attracting approximately 200 participants successfully throughout Zoom, and same applied from YouTube. The second series on April 28th, attracting about 350 participants, and today we hope the enthusiastic participants are more. We appreciate that some of you have been coming to the 3rd time due to your concern about the topic. Given widespread and growing concern about the theme, access to digital scholarly publication, we hope this webinar can get the benefit in encouraging science and technology to be more connected to societal needs, and by promoting equal opportunities for all, to scientists, innovators, public policymakers, and citizens. As UNESCO stated, that open science is the movement to make scientific research and data accessible to all levels of inquiring society, amateur or professional. It includes practices such as publishing open scientific research, campaigning for open access, and generally making it easier to publish and to communicate scientific knowledge. In Asia, open access has started in the form of subject gateways for informal collection of articles on web pages and directories. The regions then developed the transition to open access knowledge repositories supported by digital libraries technology, which the main contributors come from scholarly literatures, journals, proceedings, and communication. The network digital environment has enabled the creation of many new kinds of works that are accessible to end users directly. The motives behind its emergence are linked to the desire of making the most possibility use opened up by computer access and networks. This makes the knowledge accessible and transparent and shall be shared and developed through collaborative networks. However, there are problems escalated that should be tackled in the open access movement. Although the access is open and free, but production of information or literature is not free and put the burden to the publishers and the researchers, emerging predatory publishers, and raising misconduct of research. That is why this concern derives IP effort in campaigning, putting the ethics as well as open sciences in the spirit of development and dissemination of science and technology for all. The same innovative spirit leading to open access also led to exploring new publishing models with open access as a basis. Many of these resources have become essential tools for scholars conducting research and disseminating their ideas and work. By organizing this series of webinars and put forward the concerns in digital scholarly communication, we hope the discussion later will come up with positive ideas in capturing and benefiting the development of digital scholar communication, and at the same time to tackle the contentious issue. We should identify statements that are put forward to the respective governments, stakeholders, concerned scholar communities to capture the movement of open access, and at the same time to promote the proper model of distribution of scholarly research and communication. Hope the success of this webinar. I wish you all stay healthy and safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Satriel. And now, shall we ask the President of ASA, Professor Johan Kim, to say a few words of his congratulatory remarks to our audience in this webinar. Please, Professor.
Okay, thank you, Finaria. The material I prepared for the congratulatory remark today is already been expressed by the excellent speech of President Bordujon Negro of Indonesian Academy of Science. That's the disadvantage of the people who are speaking later. So I'll omit many of my speech's content. Okay. First of all, in behalf of the ASA community, I would like to welcome all the speakers and the participants in the ASA AIPI Joint International Webinar Series. Also, I would like to mention that Indonesian Academy of Science is one of the leading member academies of the ASA in the field of science communication, especially in disaster risk management. They held these workshops twice in the past, and those outcomes were very, very helpful in other countries too. Originally, as Finario mentioned, this project was planned as an in-person international event, but as you all well aware of, due to the unexpected COVID-19 pandemic, we were forced to change the format into 3 virtual webinar series through Zoom meetings. Okay. It is my sincere wish that through these 3 webinars, we'll come up with successful open science policies, both in publication of scientific papers and also in unhindered access to the contents of the scientific journals, which can be acceptable to all stakeholders. In closing, I would like to commend the efforts and dedication of the organizers and also congratulate the officers and staff of the Indonesian Academy of Science for successful implementation of this activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Johan Kim, for your kind words. And now, shall we ask Professor Armida Ali Shahbana She is the Undersecretary General of the United Nations and also the Executive Secretary of ESCAP. And also she is also the member of the Fellow of IP. We would like to ask you to deliver a special keynote speech. And after that, could you just open this international webinar after that speech? The time is yours, Professor Armida, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ibu Pinaria. And first of all, I would like to greet the distinguished Professor Satrio Sumantri Brojonegoro, President of IP, Professor Yu Hang Kim, President of ASA, distinguished speakers, moderators, participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to address this international webinar on the topic of publication and dissemination of digital scholarly communication. There is no doubt that the COVID-19 pandemic is still ravaging across countries in the world, including our part of the region, which is Asia and the Pacific. We are witnessing resurgence of local transmission across several large developing and lower middle income countries due to the new variants, which are more infectious and fatal. The pandemic has triggered once in a century catastrophe for our humanity, widening development fault lines through its extremely disastrous impact on the most vulnerable groups of our societies. The health, educational, economic crises are negatively impacting human capital formation and productivity gains, exacerbating poverty, increasing inequality, and reversing hard-won development gains over the decades. The pandemic has revealed that policymakers must focus on, first, the public health management in scaling up the provision of vaccine, therapeutics, as well as strengthening the healthcare system. Secondly, to recover stronger through inclusive, resilient, and sustainable approaches to development policies and programs. The promotion of evidence-based policymaking is equally important through sharing of good practices, lessons learned, policy recommendations, technical assistance, and capacity development at various levels of governments and scholars' engagement. The pandemic has also turned many aspects of our physical lives into a virtual reality and has accelerated a much-needed digital transformation. The growing importance of digitalization and technology-based innovations are rapidly shaping or reshaping our interactions and dissemination of knowledge across borders. Scaling up digital plan is now a must-to-do government investment for enhancing a better crisis preparedness and increase resilience in the future. Our societies have always found new ways of transforming and navigating in times of crisis, and this ongoing crisis is not an exception. We need to constantly reinvent ourselves and turn crisis into an opportunity, including by providing fast and reliable linkage between research and evidence-based policy making. So, dear colleagues and distinguished participants, it is in this context, I would like now to highlight three broad priorities to effectively disseminate scholarly products for increasing policy impacts. The first one is that we need to engage with scholars to promote policy research. Broadly speaking, by using ESCAP, UN ESCAP as good example, we encourage scholars and experts to join our meetings to cross-fertilize ideas and share their views on addressing policy challenges, sharing best practices across countries, and informing lessons learned on policy areas. These issues are ranging from macroeconomic policy responses to shocks, global and regional impact of economic policy spillovers, and national fiscal and monetary policy priorities. In most of the regional knowledge products, to ensure the rigor and relevance, we have continuously engaged with scholar communities across the Asia-Pacific region and beyond. For example, to peer review the initial draft of the 2021 edition of Economic and Social Survey of Asia-Pacific, that is ESCAP annual flagship publication, we organized an expert group meeting in 2020. Last month, as part of outreach activities of this particular survey, in collaboration with the Indonesian Economists Association, or ISE, we jointly organized an international seminar to discuss the main messages of the report. The discussions with scholars also highlighted the need to underscore ambitious and targeted policy measures to ensure that recovery from the pandemic is robust and inclusive, and that a more resilient and sustainable future emerges from this crisis. In addition to scholars from several Asia-Pacific countries, the seminar was attended by Indonesia's central bank governor as well as a deputy minister. This is an example of how us, in this case, ESCAP analytical work, which benefited from technical discussions with scholar communities, was fed into policymaking processes. The second point is that we have to develop and support online communities of knowledge with scholars and research institutes. With the current COVID-19 pandemic, all UN, including ESCAP knowledge sharing activities, have become fully digital, making them available to a much wider audience. The digital platform brings researchers and policymakers closer together, as they often get to know each other through participation in online workshops. Training materials are also now systematically turned into self-paced e-learning courses accessible to everyone for free, of course, then with certificates being issued to those who successfully complete the online program. The existence of an online community of knowledge makes it much easier for institutions such as us to access the latest knowledge created by members and use it to formulate policy recommendations for countries in Asia and Pacific. May I now give you a few more examples? On trade-related research through Asia Pacific Research and Training Network on Trade, or ADNET, we have facilitated research and capacity building on trade-related issues, relying heavily on digital communications. In another instance, we have also co-organized the very first virtual policy hackathon with a wide range of international institutions such as WTO, UNCTAD, as well as civil society, CUTS, and academic institutions, for example, Singapore Management University. As a result, we have published online the best written contributions in the repository, and the top 12 authored contributors were invited to webinar series for policymakers. Importantly, some scholars' research papers were published in peer-reviewed journals since this initiative. The material has also now been turned into a handbook for policymakers and negotiators, with virtual workshops to be organized later this year. Similarly, on social development-related research, since last year, we embarked on a collaborative research with the Institute of Development Studies, UK, IDS, to examine the gender aspects of the policy responses to COVID-19 pandemic and propose a range of policy measures with a view to reduce and redistribute the unpaid care work. The research team have completed the Asia-Pacific overview and are now conducting an in-depth analysis of the situation in ASEAN countries, identifying good practices and developing tailored policy recommendations. All discussions and consultations with the scholars and the wider research community, best practice networks, government counterparts, etc., have taken place virtually, with digital technologies assisting the dissemination of knowledge. Example, pre-recorded presentation for expert group meetings, presentation provided over the Zoom platform for ministries of women in ASEAN countries and other counterparts. We expect to complete this action-oriented research and publication by October of this year, which will be further disseminated online and through digital social media. On the disaster risk reduction research and policy formulation, for example, we collaborated with Indian government think tank along with BIMSTEC, Climate and Weather Center, and SARC, HIV and Tuberculosis Center to organize a series of digital scholarly communication on managing risk to address the crisis of cascading disasters that are impacting SDG progress. More specifically, in consultation with the Inter-Academic Partnership, one of the partners in this webinar network, we identified scientists to share their expert opinion in several of the SDG roundtables representing the academic community. These examples are important initiatives to develop and support online communities of knowledge with scholars and research institutes to chart a new path to recover better together in Asia and the Pacific. The third point is that there is a need to build capacity and access of data and information in a more systematic manner, especially, so this I would like to underline, especially for the least developed countries and the lower middle income countries. We are constantly interacting with scholars to help them access cross-country data and information collected by agencies such as us, on national regulation policies that allow to raise their quality of research outputs. These data sets are essential tools to the analysis of, for example, extreme poverty and inequality. Furthermore, using big data is also providing new insight into public health situation and economic benefits on a real-time basis. Furthermore, with good data infrastructure and skills, scholars from several developing countries are facilitating the formulation of sound policy making in times of COVID-19 pandemic. However, in many least developed countries and even lower middle income countries, due to lack of basic ICT infrastructure, access to all this information and data, underdevelopment of other digital services, the government's policy-making opportunities and impacts have been underutilized. For example, we are working closely with research scholars, academics, and related stakeholders in improving the quality of statistics in areas such as population and social statistics, disaster-related statistics, agricultural and rural statistics, and gender and environmental statistics. So these interaction with network of scholars and institutions have been instrumental in strengthening statistical capacity to produce and disseminate data and information, which is the foundation, which is the very foundation of any good evidence-based policy making. So, dear colleagues and distinguished participants, in closing, digital communication provides enormous and still mostly untapped potential for enhancing scholar policymaker collaboration and evidence-based policy making. I'm very much encouraged to see that the engagement of scholars is taking shape in a more strategic manner. Through UN ESCAP regional platform, we have been fortunate to regularly interact with scholars to scale up knowledge and research support for policymakers in countries across Asia and the Pacific. I wish you well in your deliberation, and also I would like to hereby declare the international webinar on publication and dissemination of digital scholarly communication open. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Armida. It's very nice keynote speech and also good information for all of us to get to know what you are doing up there. We appreciate really your time and concern for this webinar. Thank you. Now, before starting the session, I would like to ask all of you to take a few minutes to memorize this special event with taking the pictures. So please open your video, your camera, and give a very nice smile to the screen. And we'll take a few minutes, and then our colleague will just give you what is it, sign when if it is over. So very nice smile to the camera, please.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much. Right, now we can start then. Okay, shall we start the program and remind to all of you once again, the questions or comments or inputs can be put forward from the Q&A button from the participants room. And please identify to whom that you would like to ask or to give comments or, inputs. While in the presenter room, the participants can raise hands or maybe just direct asking the question. And then the chair will select the common asked questions to be answered by the presenters or particular presenter. And the organizing committee would assist you as well if you'd like to be assisted. So that is the information that I should put forward. Now, allow me to invite the moderator of session 1, Dr. Aswin Sasongko. So Dr. Aswin Sasongko is from the Telkom University and also the member of the National ICT Council. And he's also the principal researcher from the Indonesian Institute of LIPI, Indonesian Institute of Sciences or LIPI. And he's got so many long careers that you can just read through in here in the government bodies. So please welcome Dr. Aswin Sasongko.
Shall we start now?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Perhaps you can remove the
Okay.
Yes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we can start our session 1 now. Well, we are in a good time now because our session, we will have 3 speakers, 3 distinguished speakers. That is, first is Professor James Fox from the Academy of Social Sciences in Australia, which is also, he is also lecturer in the ANU, Australian National University. The second will be Dr. Barry Giuliano from IPB University Bogor, Indonesia. And he is also the, member of the Indonesian Young Scientist Academy. And the third speaker will be Ms. Yvonne Christiani, who is open data advocate and manager of open data project in the Kertas Budaya Goethe Institute in Jakarta. Now, this is the 3 speakers we have, and we have 1 hour time. Now, we are actually in a good time now, because it is supposed to start at 1:40 p.m. Now, we are 1:38 p.m. So, if every speaker can speak in about 10 minutes or so, and so we will have time for question and answers. As mentioned by Ibu Finaria, the question and answers, the question and answer can be put in the QA button, but and the speakers can answer that also in the QA button, and also at the, depending on the time, then we can have for the speakers to answer directly to the questions. Now, First is the Professor James Fox, who is the Editor Secretary of the AASSA. In Australia, President Association of Asian Social Science Sister Council, Director of Research School of Pacific Studies, ANU, co-founder of ANU Press, and recent open access publications to ANU Press. You have several publications on that. And Professor James Fox, the time is yours. If you can give your presentation in around 10 minutes. Thank you.
All right, if you can see me. First
Yes.
of all, I would like to thank Professor Satrio for organizing this, and I want to thank Professor Kim, who has also been involved from the beginning. And then, as we have to do, as we should do in Australia, I want to acknowledge the first Australians whose land we now operate on, and pay our respects to the Ngunnawal people, elders past, present, and future. That's something that we use in Australia to mengakui the Tuan Tanah Asli setempat. Now, let me share my screen if I can manage it. Find my, yes. Can you see that? Is that sufficient?
Can you make it bigger?
I'll try to make it, if I can find the button to do that. There it is. All right.
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Sure.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Good.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to take off from what we were discussing at the last seminar, but I want to take lessons from the ANU Press. I was a co-founder of the ANU Press, and it's a baby that I followed for some long time in its development. Now, the ANU Press was established in 2003 and is one of the largest open access university presses in the world. It publishes journals and monographs, but I'm going to focus only on monographs. Other people have been speaking about journals. What's interesting is that last year in COVID lockdown, we had 5.1 million downloads of monographs. That set a new record for us, and we had downloads from every country in the world except North Korea. Now, when I say downloads, I'm not talking about visits. I'm talking about a document transferred from our website to another site. It's the transfer of a document that counts in our catalog of 5.1 million downloads. At the same time, I want to emphasize we're a tiny publishing house, because we have only about 4 people that operate the engine of the system, but we have 22 editorial committees that are involved in doing all the curating and all of the preparation that leads to the publication of monographs. Now, in open access publishing, what is important is this curatorial function. It means critical, and I think is primary. The whole idea of selecting a monograph, rigorous peer review, and then the manuscript preparation and the presentation. All of that is done by this complex set of editorial committees. And then it reaches the press. The press then goes through the final check, publishes it, puts on all of the internet identification and subscribes it to different hubs, and then does a very important function, and that is to monitor what happens after a book is published. And that is what I'm talking about as impact. When we began, however, it wasn't easy. When we began this press in 2003, we couldn't get anyone who wanted to publish with us because of the prestige factors. Our academics, even at the ANU, did not want to publish with us, but we tried to give them a contrast. In 2003 and 4, a prestige press would publish 200 to 350 copies of a monograph. And if that monograph was not sold, generally it would be remaindered. And when the book was out of print, it was difficult to obtain. Also, the price of monographs by that time had reached even into the hundreds of dollars, $150. I had a monograph at the time that cost 120 pounds, and I couldn't afford to buy an extra copy. As the ANU Press developed, we offered a different model. We ordered quality edited publication with strong peer review. We had to keep our peer review as strong as any of the prestige presses. But our monographs, when they began, would generally have 250 copies per month continuing. And for most monographs, downloads tended to increase over time. Books were readily available. They did not go out of print. And finally, you didn't sign away your work. The author retained the copyright. So that was the model we offered, and that's the model we've developed. When a book is published, what happens? And this is important. It is placed on the ANU server for direct downloads. However, it's also lodged on JSTOR and other open access hubs, Open and ProQuest, and these can be downloaded directly. Similarly, all our books are distributed to libraries around the world with catalog information. They can be placed on university servers and downloaded directly, because all our downloads are downloaded for free. They're open also to file sharing, so that you can store them on places like ResearchGate or academia. And authors can, to increase visibility, add an ORCID number to their linkages so that the book becomes more visible on the internet. So then the important thing was monitoring these analytics we developed, or we borrowed, or we used to find out what was happening to our books. We have an internal program for monitoring downloads. We use Google Analytics for identifying global distribution. We have, and JSTOR is a very important figure in open access. We have JSTOR figures for additional open access per book. And increasingly, it accounted, and originally in the beginning, for only 10 or 20% of downloads. I think now it's approaching 30 to 40% of our downloads come not from directly from the ANU, but through JSTOR. And then we use Altmetrics, is another variety of social media to see how books are doing on the different media data systems. The result. And within 5 years of the founding of the ANU Press, what happened was that our downloads outside of Australia increased beyond those in Australia. And if you look at these figures from last year, you'll see that the United States and United Kingdom market is greater than the Australian market. China is a very big downloader, 11%, France, Germany, the Philippines, India, Japan, and then if you take all of the rest of the world, that's about 25% of all downloads. So when I say we're publishing to the world, we are in fact reaching out to all the different countries in the world. Now I want to take 2 examples of books on Indonesia. This is an primarily Indonesian audience, and I would just show you what some of these books do. This is a book by Abdul Ghafur Muhaimin, For a long time, it had download statistics of about 3,900 per annum. But then in 2017, it went up to 7,051. 2018, 7,934 downloads per annum, 9,000, almost 10,000 per annum. And then last year, it went up to 13,922 downloads per annum. By this rate, and as far as we can see, it's being downloaded primarily in the United States and also in England. And from what I can judge now, I would say that more people are downloading and reading Abdul Ghaffar Mohaimin's book, Islamic Traditions of Cirebon, than are now reading Clifford Geertz's Religion of Java. A second book, which is interesting, this is a book by Dindin Salahuddin. It was at about just less than 2,000 per annum in 2017. Then it started rising 2,000, almost 3,000 in 2018. 2019, it would reach 5,500. And last year, it was over 9,307 downloads. This is another very popular book worldwide, but particularly, as far as we can see, in the United States and in England. And my suspicion is that it's used in courses because there are sudden bursts of downloading for this book. We can tell on a month-by-month basis. All right. I have to say, what I've done, because we were introduced to all of the different systems in Indonesia. I've done, for the last week or so, been looking through these different systems, and I'm very, very impressed. Indonesia has undoubtedly the most extensive open access systems in the world. It has Garuda, which is very interesting because you can follow all of Indonesia's 11,976 journals, almost 12,000 open access journals and conferences identified, and you can find them. You have Rama, which is the digital repository. It's still not very big, but it has 89. It has identifiers of 189 to 189 repositories. Sinta, which is, as far as I can see, the very key to the system because it's a performance indicator for over 220,000 researchers. And it gives you departments, it gives you institutions, journals. It's the key evaluating index. There's Arjani, which is interesting, a scientific integrity site, and then ID Manulis, which is the scientific writing and collaboration network system, which is a training system. There's also one that hasn't been mentioned, but I've been using this long before I knew of these other ones. This is Indonesia One Search, which is the digital index to all of Indonesia's libraries. This is an extraordinarily useful tool to find things that you didn't even know existed because it has a very good search engine. Finally, I'd mention, though it's not open access, Indonesia's One Map initiative, which is a single database. This is open now, which is extraordinarily powerful. I've seen it demonstrated in Jakarta. I know how powerful it is. And if ever that was to go open access, that would be another revolution in how we view data in Indonesia. However, and here is the but. Whereas we try to publish to the world, the ANU Press tries to publish to the world, less than 1% of ANU Press publications are downloaded in Indonesia. As far as I can tell by searching on on One Indonesia search, few Indonesian libraries have downloaded any of the ANU Press's books to their catalogs. And unfortunately, our Indonesian authors do not gain any recognition on Sinta. They're different in entirely different systems. So in conclusion, I would just point out that open access scholarly communication is a complex system in very rapid change with many incompatible systems. There are different models and standards, different national agendas, different data analytics, and they're all shaped by strong competition from commercial interests. There's a galaxy of parallel open access worlds still to be explored. If you look at it, you can consider what I suggest as a concluding remark, that we open to the world of open access, explore alternate data analytic systems. Scopus is one of several commercial data analytical systems. Clarivate, which now has controls Web of Science, is another. There's a very interesting site called iFinder, which can be used, but I've heard rumors that it's actually been purchased by Elsevier. More importantly, I would call attention to the directory of open access books, which is extremely useful because it identifies all the presses that are producing open access books, and equally important, the directory of open access journals, which identifies many of the open access journals. It identifies many of the Indonesian open access journals, but certainly not all of them. So looking to the future, the world of open access is changing rapidly and dramatically. And if we were to have a webinar like this again in just 3 years, we'd find the world is much richer, more diverse, and perhaps even more interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor James Fox. Very interesting presentations. And we can see how with open access, you have higher and higher downloads of many important publications. And another thing which is important also, I very appreciate that you know very much about Indonesian open access system. You know, the Sinta, Rama, and so on. Now, bearing in mind that Sinta, Rama, and so on is for all of us, Sinta, Rama, and so on is abbreviation actually. Abbreviation for names of the publication of the open access Indonesia. But Sinta, Rama, Anjani, and so on are also names of in Ramayana legend. So that's a very interesting and very useful to remember. Secondly, is that one thing that Professor James Fox also mentioned about the Perpustakaan Nasional, the National Library. This is even have older open access publication for our people. And it is important to note that Indonesian Academy of Sciences, IP office, is also at the same building with the National Library. So this is also another thing that important for the IP to carry out this open access seminar. And we know that your proposal is to hopefully to do the same thing again in 3 years' time. Thank you, Professor Fox. And the second speaker will be Dr. Barry Giuliano. Dr. Barry Giuliano is from IPB in Institut Pertanian Bogor. It's a IPB University in Bogor, from the Faculty of Mathematics and Natural Sciences, Bogor Agricultural University. He's active member of Indonesian Academy of Young Scientists, and so as Secretary General also, and has been selected as a member of ALBI since 2016, and nominated on his academic track record. He has recent interest in the fields of several things in epigenetic regulation of natural stem and so on. Perhaps, Pak Barry, I also know that you are very active during the setup of the Undang-Undang Sistem Iptek Nasional, the National Science and Technology Law of Indonesia, which is finalized last year. And I know you are very active in this field and give a lot of input to the DPR, to our parliament. So, Pak Barry, the time is yours, and you have around 10 minutes or so to give your presentation. Please, the time is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Aswin. I want to say greeting to all distinguished guests that I cannot mention one by one because it will take a lot of time. Let me share my PowerPoint. I hope you all already can see my PowerPoints. So
Yes.
I am a little bit
Clear.
confused to give a title for what I'm gonna explain in first. So I just title it plus, and then in the end I will talk about the future of scholarly publishing and communication, which is already being suggested by several experts. As written here, I am also a chief editor of Hayati Journal of Biosciences, and I will talk about it a little bit later. So this is the position of scholarly contribution, which is indexed in Scopus, analyzed by Samego Lab in the log scale. We can see that several countries produce numbers of scientific output, but they have also similar number of index journal in their country. But in the other end, we also see some producing country, but with little or none of the index journal publication. So this is very interesting because Indonesia, I think, perform rather good because we have many documents, scientific documents, and also we have many scientific journal index, at least by Scopus. And this is the number of documents, scientific article in Indonesia, constantly increasing, although many criticism said that this is because the increased number of the proceedings article, not reflecting the quality of the published documents. And gladly, we can say, as already mentioned by Professor James Fox, most of the publication is actually open access, and we are a leader in, at least in ASEAN countries. And because we can only show 6 countries here, so I can only put 6 countries in this graph. And as you can see from this slide, actually Indonesia have more than 50,000 journal registered with ISSN. And only half of them is electronic journal, and very few, only 6,000, actually indexed by SINTA. And as you can see, SINTA have different level, S1 until S6, and S1 is the upper level. We only have 95, and from the 6,000, only 1,800 it's indexed by the Directory of Open Access Journal, and we only have 96 journal indexed by Scopus and other index, and none already enter Web of Science core collection. And my journal, Hayati Journal of Biosciences, is among one of the 69 journal already indexed by Scopus. And we also perform rather good in terms of Indonesian standard in journal. And as you can see, our position now in the agricultural and biological sciences field, which is a very competitive field in the journal publishing, we are now in the quartile 2 already for 3 years. And as you can see, almost 1/4 of citing journal is from quartile 1 journal, that citing article in Hayati, and the same for the key 2, key 3, and key 4. So almost equal number of citing journal that cite article in Hayati. And the article in Hayati mostly reference or cited 50% key 1 article or article from a key 1 journal. So I think we quite good in establishing the system of citation in our journal. And of course, we also index in SINTA, which is also already mentioned by Professor James Fox. And the mission of Hayati is to promote scientific achievement of Indonesian researchers. So we are very Indonesian minded, and we promote them to the international community, especially research from the field of tropical biosciences. And the publisher is our university, Institute Pertanian Bogor, and also the Society of Biology, which is called the Indonesian Biological Society. We publish almost all fields in the biology and all life forms. And one of the interests in Hayati, which made the article is cited by many articles from abroad, is because we publish endemic species such as orangutan, Komodo dragon, Sumatran rhinoceros, etc. And also we publish ancient human such as Homo floresiensis. And also because we are from the agricultural university, we publish food, especially about rice, tempe, which is a traditional fermented soy meat, and banana, which is not originated from Indonesia, but really have important economic value in Indonesia. And we also have a faculty of fisheries, so we also publish about marine and fisheries, such as coral, common carp, and so on and so forth. So we publish a lot of things. So we are not a specialized journal, more a generalist journal in biology. And as you can see from the cover, we cover many, many things. And what I want to say that my experience to manage Hayati made me believe that the publication and dissemination of scholarly communication or publication is really depend on the commitment of the team of the journal. And in Hayati, we have at least 8 team subdivision, such as publisher, chief editor, and so on. The commitment is very unique because mostly they are not paid. So they don't have any reward in terms of money or salary. So they, and also they don't have any reward in terms of points for the for the career points in our public service. So this is very interesting because then the people who work in the journal in Indonesia, such as Hayati, for example, is voluntarily because of the scientific achievement. And the story is began in 1994. We first published in 1994, and then we become an official journal of the society since 2009 in their charter. And I was continuing a long history of management. I started to become chief editor in 2013 until now. And this is the short history. So as you can see, we first published in Bahasa in English, and from 2008 full in English, and from 2009 we started to join the movement for the digitalization and also certification and indexing in several index service, as you can see. And we also make an international editorial board since then. So now we currently have 60% editorial board from abroad. And we experience many publishing business scheme, and also other interesting is the publishing software scheme. So for example, we was in Elsevier, we hosted by Elsevier. So we experienced how to be hosted by a big publisher. And we also use the EVIS, which is a submission or management submission system by Elsevier. And we also, until now, still have our content put in Science Direct. So this is a good experience, although the operation now is terminated because we have several issues with Elsevier. And then we have this kind of trademark article, such as shown in this picture when we was with Elsevier, when we were with Elsevier. And then we changed our system to bench press, which is from Highwire. So this is the same system used by PNS or Nature and Science. and we also experience different things with this system. And finally, currently we going back with open journal system. We will know and experience several shortcomings and advantage or disadvantage of using different system from different services that make us believe that several issues should be tackled that I will explain later. So I bump up with this great report from the expert group, which is, you can see the author and editor in the slide. And this expert group make a report that looking at how the status of current scholarly publishing and current scholarly communication, and try to establish recommendation for the future based on their perspective. And this report is being submitted to the European Commission. My experience in managing Hayati with several different publishers and several different systems, when I read this report, it's truly represent my thinking. So that's what I want to share to you. But before that, I want you to know that the principle that they use when they make this report is this 10 principle. So maximizing accessibility, maximizing usability, supporting an expanding range of contribution, a distributed open infrastructure. They also have the equity, diversity, and inclusivity principle, community building, promoting high quality research and its integrity, facilitating the evaluation, promoting flexibility and innovation, and cost effectiveness. So the recommendation from them to several key actors is below. So first, the recommendation is for the researcher and university.
Mohon,
First,
Pak Barry, mohon perhatian waktunya, Pak.
Okay, so as you can see, when participating in research assessment, for example, in hiring, promotion, and tenure and funding decision, we should focus more on the merit and impact of researcher work, not the metrics. Particularly, we should take a look the recommendation from Dora and Leiden Manifesto. And we should take responsibility for ensuring that all research contributions are made openly available, discoverable, and usable according to agreed community standard. And we should increase awareness of and sense of responsibility for implication of choices and action in role as author, reviewer, and member, and decision-making group. And we should strive for a balanced and diverse representation of gender, geography, and career stage when seeking collaboration, organizing conference, convening committee, and other area. And last, we should work toward increased recognition and appreciation of peer review work as core research tasks. To this end, the support for greater transparency, including the publishing of a signed report. And we also, of course, should support better training and inclusion and focus on the quality of the research in peer review. And my mistake, still another one. And in case of the communities of researchers, we should develop policy and practice which is support all the things that already mentioned above. And this is the recommendation for the researcher and university, which I think most of us represent here. But they also make several other recommendations for another actor. So for example, for publisher, for funders, and for the society in general. You can read and take the recommendation from their report, which is available freely online, and you can take also the report, which is can be shared after this webinar. Thank you very much, Dr. Aswin, and I'm sorry for taking more than 10 minutes for this presentation.
Thank you, Pak Barry. Very interesting presentations, especially because it is directly related to your experience in setting up a journal in your field. I think your experience should be shared to other journal operators in Indonesia. Yeah? How to compare between journals with commercial indexes and open publications. Perhaps one day Perpusnas or IP can set up some sort like this to share your experience with other journal publishers in Indonesia, especially with the new reorganization of Ristek and Dikbud. Perhaps this might be more and more important then. Now, before we start this third one, Professor James Fox, there are some questions for you in the question and answer platform. And Pak Barry, there's also a question for you, not in the QA, but in the chat. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to put more questions to Pak Barry and Professor James Fox, you can do it preferably in the QA platform. So, because it is easier. And Professor Fox and Dr. Barry can answer that question also in the QA button. So, ladies and gentlemen, now we start with the third presentations. That is from Ibu Yvonne Christiani. Ibu Yvonne Christiani. Miss Yvonne Christiani is from Coordinator for Open Data Project at the Goethe Institute in Jakarta. It's a German institute. She then oversees Retas Budaya Project and Open Culture Data Hackathon in 2020. Previously, she is a deputy chair of Wikimedia Indonesia and has been volunteering for Wikimedia since 2010. Her paper has also published in the New Review of Hypermedia Multimedia, and she obtained her master's degree in social and political philosophy in Paris. So, should be very multilingual speaker, this Ibu Yvonne. France, English, hopefully also German, I think, in Goethe Institute. She's a Creative Commons Global Network member and advocate for open access and open license. Ibu Yvonne, please, the time is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Dr. Arwin Sasongko. I will share my screen. Okay. Yes. So previously, I would like to thank the organizing committee, IP and ASA, for organizing this webinar and also for inviting me. It is such an honor for me to be able to be present here with distinguished guests and also with in the presence of amazing speakers. I'm Yvonne Christiani. I am currently the project coordinator at Goethe Institute Jakarta. I'm responsible for Retas Budaya project, which I will talk about in depth later. And my background is not in an academic research. My background is in NGOs. So hopefully I could give quite a different perspective here from a non-academic perspective. Yeah, so this is my presentation. I hope you can all see my screen. And first of all, okay. Yeah, so talking about open access, I think we've all been familiar. We're all familiar with the open access policy and the open access system. And I think Professor James Fox has also touched a lot about open access. And I think we've agreed that the open access to research has provided some benefits that were not available before. It removed barriers to obtain and read scientific findings. So people, scientists and non-scientists alike, could download scientific research and could read the findings without having to pay. because the findings not put it behind the paywall, and this is advantageous because it could also accelerate discovery. For example, a researcher in Australia, when immediately after publishing his or her research, could be the findings could be accessed by another scientist from across the globe. So it would reduce the time for dissemination, and it could also reach audiences beyond researchers. So interested public who are not scientists, who wanted to know what is the latest finding in certain topics, could easily access and read the findings in the topic they're interested to, and this of course leads to increased impact. But open access is just so I would like to see to take a step back and see the bigger picture. Open access is only a small part of the open ecosystem. As you can see in the picture here, we have open access, but also in the open ecosystem there are other parts such as open data, open education, open licenses.
Bu Ivon, ini Bu Ivon paparannya ini cuma setengah kelihatannya, Bu.
Oh, okay.
Tadi di chat juga ada beberapa yang bicara mengenai paparan Ibu yang nggak kelihatan semuanya. Mungkin bisa dicek dulu.
Okay. Sudah belum, Pak?
Udah kelihatan, tapi yang ini yang belum diperbesar ya, Bu.
Okay. Let's see. Ya. Bagaimana kalau gini? Bisa? Sudah ya, Pak?
Okay, fine.
Sudah kelihatan oke.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, it's part of the open ecosystem. And so I know the title of this webinar is Publication and Dissemination of Digital Scholarly Communication, but please allow me to take a step back and go back before the publication phase, but go into the production of scientific research, and more specifically in the participatory production phase of scientific research. So with open access, the public, scientists and non-scientists alike can have access to scientific publications, while in the participatory research, the public, especially non-scientists, can participate in scientific research. So what is participatory research? There are a lot of terms that is associated and might use interchangeably with participatory research. We've heard the terms such as citizen science, crowdsourcing, or open science. But what I mean by participatory research is this definition by Strasser et al. By Strasser. Participatory research is the many ways in which members of the public have engaged and continue to engage in the production of scientific knowledge. So in participatory research, the general public participate to some degree in collecting the data, in analyzing the data, or also in self-reporting. For example, a lot of crowdsourcing projects rely on volunteers in many parts of the world to go in their immediate environment and report and collect the data and give it back to the scientists. Also in making and or computing part of the production. So participatory research is not just a recent concept. There is an early example where in Australia in 1847, a colonial botanist, Ferdinand Muller, used newspaper advertisements to call for volunteers to help him collect specimens of every plant in Australia. So this was the time before the internet. So he used this newspaper advertisement and asked not only scientists but the general public. A lot of mothers and children joined his project, and it took 40 years and 1,300 volunteers. And there was one particular volunteer, a mother of 11 children who lives near Darling River in New South Wales, who collected 500 plants for him. So he was set with this humongous task that he would not be able to do himself, and he turned to the public to help him complete this task. And now with the internet, I think with the recent transformation of our digital technology, we can do so much more. We can do so much more efficient and bigger. The fundamental question is why? Why do we need participatory research? Why do we do it? We can talk about the ideal reasons like democratizing science, socializing public to the science, to the methods of science, but the more fundamental reason is pragmatic, like what Ferdinand Müller did. It enables research on a bigger scale by adding additional people, and it's efficient, and it reduces the amount of resources and time needed to finish such a big research. And especially in the social science research, this method can tap into new sources of information, knowledge, and perspective, especially when researching a particular community, which is fundamental in having the perspective of this community contributed to the production of the scientific research. It is also a new methods where by utilizing this new method, we can now take on a bigger question that was previously impossible to do. And it's also improving the openness and reliability of research. Usually when only one scientist in social science doing the research, it could introduce some biases, but with the help of the crowd and the public, it could probably reduce the amount of the bias from the scientists. And it's also open potentials for international and cross-border cooperation. For example, where there are research questions pertaining not only to one country, but 2 or more countries. This method is quite a suitable one. Through my previous project, Retas Budaya, which is a cultural data hackathon, I've seen some citizen science project examples in Indonesia, and this is by no means an exhaustive list because I also have a limited knowledge, but I have found a very interesting projects done by Dr. Ali Humaydi from LIPI, Institute of Sciences in Indonesia. He embarked on this research, I believe in 2017 or 2018. He created this culinary encyclopedia where he asked volunteers to submit their traditional culinary dishes from all around Indonesia and take a picture of it and submit a little bit of information about it. And to date, it has gathered some 15,000 data for all of the dishes from Indonesia. So this is a very great example where volunteers participate in the data collection part of the research. Apart from that, this is not yet a scientific research, but a project done by Museum Dewantara Kirtigriya in Jogja in collaboration with Wikimedia Indonesia. They have a collection of letters from Ki Hajar Dewantara, which was Minister of Education in Indonesia, and it was almost a decade due to the nature of the paper, and they collaborate and they digitize all of the letters and there are some written in Indonesian, some in Japanese, and some in Dutch. So in collaboration with Wikimedia Netherlands, volunteers helped transcribe the letters of Ki Hajar Dewantara in Dutch, and then the letters were translated as well from Dutch to Bahasa Indonesia. So this is another example of how volunteers could help enrich a collection, which can then be used for further scientific research. And lastly, I would like to talk about the Retas Budaya project, which is an open cultural data hackathon. We did it last year. There are several tracks, but the idea is to attract and ask GLAM institutions to join. GLAM as in galleries, libraries, archives, and museums in Indonesia, who has huge cultural data, but is not yet available to everyone. It's not yet digitized. It's not yet on the internet. So we partner with 11 GLAM partners, and they choose some part of their collections, and they digitize all their that collections, and they make it available online in the platform Wikimedia Commons. And they make it open so that everyone can download it and can also work on it. They can change and they can create new work based on the data that is open. So there are several tracks for this open cultural data hackathon. One of them is citizen science and open data. We partner with ILIPI, Indonesian Institute of Sciences, to organize this track, and we've learned a lot from this track. We've also had a panel discussion about citizen science and open data, and gathering perspectives from not only Indonesia but also Germany and New Zealand. There were speakers from New Zealand. And in this track, we collaborate with Indonesian Institute of Sciences, who has this RIN, National Science Repository, and volunteers could upload their data sets into this repository, into this platform, which can then be used by researchers to as a basis, as a database for their further research. And it was specifically in the cultural topics. And yeah, one of the volunteers submitted pictures of traditional houses in Padang. And it was the first project of the kind of citizen science in Indonesia. And what did we learn from this project? We learned that the concept of citizen science is fairly new in Indonesia, although some practices has been done, for example, with the culinary encyclopedia, but it's not dubbed as citizen science. It usually probably known as community research, etc. But it is still new, not only for not a lot of researchers taking on this method or participatory research, but it's also new for the volunteers. So we need to do quite some socialization to make them acknowledge what is citizen science, why do they need to, why would they volunteer, and etc. And we also learned that to attract public in becoming citizen scientists to participate in research, we need to have a clear goal of what the research is about, and then we could, for example, attract the public who has interest in that particular topic, in that particular research topic. And we've also we have to be able to communicate what are the intended use of the data. So for example, we ask them to collect some data, but we need to also communicate with them what would the data be used for, and would the data be available after the research or after the projects, because it will be important to have the data preserved, because it's the work of volunteers. They would really want it to be available in the period to come for other research projects. And we've also discovered that using an established platform is, of course, way easier than having to train people in using a new platform. With, for example, Wikimedia Commons or Wikipedia, a lot of people are already using it. It's quite easy to ask them to upload or submit there. But when it's a new platform, it's sometimes the barrier to entry is quite high, so they could feel discouraged if they need to create, if it takes more time to learn. So what we learn is we need to find a way so that volunteers feel comfortable, and it takes not much of their time to contribute. So yeah, in conclusion, I think citizen science is still it's the beginning of the citizen science journey in Indonesia. It's still a long journey, but I am very optimistic that in the years to come, if we had more of these projects, it could also develop into something bigger and better. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Ibu Ina, dan thank you very much for the nice presentations, very useful, not only for the participants, but also for me. It is interesting to learn, for me to learn about the concept of the citizen science, citizen scientist. In Indonesia, normally we only heard about citizen journalism and user-generated content in many social media. Now I learned a lot and new things about how science content for research in the participatory research. Ladies and gentlemen, now if we have enough time, we know it's 2:35. We have until 2:45, so we have 10 minutes, and we have several questions and also comments. Actually, not only questions but also comments from the participants, both in the question and answer. And it seems that there are previously some participants who cannot access the question and answers button, so they put some comment and question in the chat, but then it has been corrected and put also in the question and answer. So if you, Professor Fox, Dr. Barry, and Ms. Yvonne can look at both the question and answers, mainly both in the question and answers section, but also there are some very few in the chat also. And some questions are also directly very operational. To Dr. Barry, for example, can I put my paper in your journal? Which is very direct and operational. So for the last 10 minutes, I would like to ask Professor Fox and then Dr. Barry and their Ms. Yvonne to give their comments and answer, and perhaps short answer to all the question and comments. Professor Fox, please. Professor Fox, if you have any comments or short answer to the participants, please.
I've answered or tried to answer quite a number of questions that have come in the Q&A. One of the important aspects, I think, of open access published for the researcher is that their research is widely distributed. So when you have a choice between, say, 350 possible copies of your book sold to libraries around the world, or you have, say, 200 to 300 or more downloads per month, ultimately, I think most researchers choose to go for wide distribution. So that is, I think, the biggest factor that leads people to publish, say, with the ANU Press. I have to say that at the beginning, it was very hard to obtain publications because fewer people knew about open access and few people thought that that was the way to go. Now, as I said to one of the questions, we have a flood of submissions of manuscripts. It's a very large number, and our rejection rate is going up and up because we have to continue to use strong peer review. So I think that's I think the key to what I see as the importance of open access. I think what happens is when you participate in open access, you create a community of scholars whom you may not have known about. When you publish a book, as I have, and find out that you get a response to your book from not just the US or Australia, but from Finland to the South Pacific to South America, you begin to realize that there is this wider community you didn't know existed, and then suddenly you are participating and making comparisons with their research. So I think there's a special benefit to the researcher from the distribution of large numbers of books. Finally, and this really relates to the analytics. We had hoped, and we are still working on improving our analytic monitoring of individual books. And we thought we would be able, when someone who is published with us goes for promotion, we would be able to give them a great deal of information on where their book was downloaded, and increasingly by whom, and possibly for what purposes. Now, our analytics are still not up to, say, the analytics of Amazon, far, far from it. But as we increase our capacity for monitoring who is downloading, we have the capacity to inform our authors as to who is in fact using their book. So I think I'll make those comments.
Thank you very much. Oh, yes, thank you very much, Professor Fox. And meanwhile, if you have, there are some questions that you have not answered, you can also type in the question and answer. And next is Dr. Barry. There's some question and comments, if you can give your comments and answers too.
Yeah, I already gave my answer to almost, I think, all question, but I want just to emphasize the burden as the chief editor. For example, in my case, so we receive more than 700 manuscripts a year, 700, and we can only publish 40 maximum a year because our capability. So you can imagine this voluntary work with this kind of huge submission and also peer review process hinder us from doing good publication and dissemination. Good in the meaning fast and also open. So as I already mentioned, we can take a look the report which I already presented. The recommendation from them is, I think, very good to establish the future practice for our publishing and dissemination process. So, for example, we should, I think, diminish the use of metrics and the use of index as a sole judgment for the reputation of researcher. So we need to judge the paper by reading the paper, not by judging the metrics or the index of the paper. So the policy should be put by university or research center or government. They need to read the track record and also read the article using, of course, a board of reviewer or committee, not just using metrics as a sole indicator. I think if this is established in Indonesia, at least we can have good ecosystem for academic publishing and dissemination. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Barry. Yeah, before going to Ms. Yvonne, because I was told that we have a few more minutes before we can start the second session. I saw this Dr. Dasapta raise hand about to question. Dr. Dasapta, are you there? Yes. Can you give your question?
Thank you, Pak. Thank you for our presenters for the interesting presentation. My question would be directed to Mbak Yvonne. Mbak Yvonne, apa kabar? So I might put you as in the public side. Because you said you have no background in academics. So if I put you in the side of the public, what would you say if all the free tools is not going to be used maximally used by the researchers because the tools are lacking of prestige. Everyone can write in Wikipedia, but there's no prestige in Wikipedia. As the public, what would you say? Thank you, Pak. Thank you, Pak Moderator.
Terima kasih, Pak. Ada Sabta. Bu Yvonne, Miss Yvonne, can you give your comments and response to some question and comments? Please, Mrs. Yvonne, you have, I think, the last 3 minutes or 4 minutes. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you for the question, Mas Erwin. Yeah. So looking from as a public as a non-academic, I think what is most important for the public in participating in this participatory research, for the public, it's not so much. There is a certain well, we can say there is a prestige would help for people to volunteer, but I think like for most of the publics, they would volunteer in a research or in a crowdsourcing projects if it is a topic that they that are very close to their heart, that they have a strong interest in that topic. And I could only say from the experience of Wikipedia, people, I'm also amazed like how many people volunteers write on Wikipedia even though they would not get any money and also no recognition because writing on Wikipedia is anonymous, but they could get satisfaction just because they would like to contribute their own knowledge. For example, a lot of Wikipedians write about their hobbies. For example, a lot of Wikipedians love automotives, or a lot of Wikipedians like botanies, even though they're not scientists themselves, but they are very curious and they read a lot on their topics, and they would like to show and contribute their knowledge through Wikipedia, even though their name will not appear, or even though they will not have a monetary compensation. So I think yeah, that's a very that is a more important motivation for the public, and it would I think the fact that what they contributed can help other people. Like for example, on Wikipedia, a lot of people can read what they've written. It's already a satisfaction and motivation by themselves. If they didn't feel like what they've contributed is useful or it's not used by any people, I think they would easily discourage and would not contribute again. So I hope that answers your question.
One more thing, Mbak Christine. Do you think there are many scientists or researchers, Indonesian researchers using Wikipedia as authors, as contributors?
I cannot say because I don't know how many academics or researchers use Wikipedia. But what I can say is Wikipedia is I think could fill the gap in the research process. For example, for a lot of people who cannot access scientific research, they can read a summary of it on Wikipedia, which is free and accessible for everyone. And it's also important for not only academicians, for students, not in terms of copy pasting the Wikipedia article to their publication, but it's important to have because they're in science communication. It's important that sometimes even though the scientific paper is available, it's still hard to it's difficult to be understood by the non-academics. So it's important to have somebody translated it in a very easy way, easy to understand way. And that's why that's how Wikipedia comes into place. Translate a very dense and difficult research findings into a language that is easily understandable by the public. I think I hope that answers.
Thank you, Bu Yvonne, and thank you all the speakers. Let's give a big applause to the 3 speakers. So I'm trying to do it as close as possible if we have a meeting in the physical space, you see. So although the meeting in cyberspace is limited, we cannot have coffee and tea together. Normally I have I like to have coffee with Professor Satrio, but now I have not coffee with him for 2 years now on. So let's try to get adapt to this cyberspace meeting and webinar. So thanks a lot once more to Professor Fox, Dr. Barry, and Ms. Yvonne. And next, I would like to pass this to Ibu Finaria for going to the second session. Ibu Finaria, please.
Thank you, Dr. Aswin, for moderating the session 1. It's very good to, it's good knowledge and great knowledge as well from those 3 presenters. And now we would like to ask other presenters, but before, shall we move to the second session and kindly invite Professor Sri Adiningsih from the University of Gadjah Mada. And also Professor Adiningsih is the IP Fellow as well. So shall we ask and invite as the moderator of session 2?
Thank you. Thank you, Ibu Finaria. Ladies and gentlemen, really, after the discussion, since since the keynote speaker and then the first session, I believe that we have learned a lot. At least we understand, and I think many of us also believe that open access is important. It's not just for academic, but also I think also for the society, because and there is also a lot of information which can be accessed by society in general, like has been discussed before, yeah, in the first session. And for the second session, now we have two distinguished speakers. First, actually, Madam, yeah, Miss Mariam Sayap MPhil. Miss Mariam Sayap, she is Professional Development Manager of ASEAN Council of Science Editor, Dubai, Uni Arab Emirates, and actually she would love to discuss about ways to facilitate, yeah, about the digital scholarly communication. And then secondly, we have Mr. Hendro Subagio MSc. He is head of Center for Scientific Data and Communication of the Indonesian Institute of Science, PDDI LIPI, and he would love to share with all of us about digital scholarly communication and the journey to open science in Indonesia. Actually, we have got some information in the first session before that, Indonesia quite consider we are open, yeah. So we would love to hear from Hendro Subagio, actually why that would happen in Indonesia. And yes, I would love to actually invite, I would like to, okay, then, yeah, I mean, it's me. I mean, I work at Economic and Business Faculty Gajah Mada University, and then actually the presenter, next please, next, yeah, Miss Mariam Sayap MPhil. Actually, it's really interesting because she is an independent writer, trainer, and strategic planner holding demonstrated history of working in publishing and the management consulting industry, and also actually several workshops has been conducted by her, and also work for ASEAN Network for Scientific Information and Development for some years. So, I mean, she is really, know what she is working on and what she is going to talk this afternoon. And next, please, Hendro Subagio, actually acting head of Center for Scientific Data and Documentation of LIPI Indonesia, and also he is developer of several information system, like actually among other Indonesian Scientific Journal Database, LARAS, National Scientific Repository, and handle many tasks related to the development and management of National Scientific Repository. So, that's why he would share with all of us the Indonesian development of the, open access right now, yeah. Please, actually, I would love to invite Ms. Mariam Sayap MPhil, like any other speaker. Would you like, I mean, I just, if you could make it around 10 minutes would be great. Even we only have two speakers for this session, but would be more in the question and answer. Please, Mr. Mariam Sayap, the time is yours.
Thank you, Professor Siri, for such a comprehensive introduction. And I would like to first extend thank you to ASA and AIPI for this initiative of conducting such a webinar on a current situation that has to be addressed for Asian publishing community. Thank you, Professor Johan Kim, again for the recommendation and for providing me this opportunity to join all of the panelists on this informative webinar. Now, let me just share the screen. If the OC can confirm if the slides are okay.
Yes, it's okay.
Visible. Okay, so my topic for current webinar series, series 3 for digital scholarly communication, I would like to highlight a very profound background, rising the root level issues and what would be the possible solutions considering Asian publishing community and the policy makers who are the real backbone who can only provide us some possible solutions. So what are the ways to facilitate this digital scholarly communication system? Here, just a very profound background, very starting with that. If we talk about digital scholarly communication, either in terms of book, journals, or any of the literature, it means it should be freely available. It should be permitted to read, download, copy, distribute, print, search, linking, each and everything to our local public. Including with that, it should have the indexing pass-ons, the data and the software that should be associated with the open access, that is our DSC system, with a lawful purpose without any financial or legal or technical barriers. Further, I would like to add the only constraint in reproduction when we talk about DSC system or open access publishing is only that the author, the researcher, controls over the integrity, and he has the right to be properly acknowledged or cited. This is just a very short introduction of what we talk about DSC system that we all know. Moving forward, I would like to share with you here the R&D expenditure when we talk about Asia and Asian publishing industry. Here, I would say the Asia's worth in terms as R&D as a percent of GDP. If you can see it in 2021, Asia is on parallel scale, and I would say one step ahead from North America and the major contributors all around the world in terms of research production and quality. Just to share with you in numbers, in the last report for 2020, even in the pandemic, the estimated and forecasted ratio of R&D and GDP for, if you can see, I just highlighted a few, China, Japan, India, South Korea, the major Asian regions, the total expenditure or the R&D and GDP, it was more than rest of the world, if we talk about Asia. Just another, what was estimated and what was recorded in 2020 and 2021, even in the pandemic, if you can see that if alone US and South America, the total GDP and R&D outreach by the total contribution of Asia, and yet alone for China. So the qualitative production and the total research production, if we talk about from Asian countries, we are on board when we talk about researchers, research knowledge, and total production. Now, moving forward, this is the whole scenario, what DSC is and where the Asian publishing industry is standing in terms of worth. Even though I would like to add here, whenever we talk about Asian publishing industry, always there is one thing for financial constraint or budget constraints. But still, Asia is contributing much more in terms of GDP for research and development. The current flaws that as per half of my experience for the last 1.5 years during the pandemic-driven open access publishing, the system of DSC, digital scholarly communication, is slow and outdated. It's technically weak. it's non-sustainable, and it's not user or much budget friendly. The systems that we are using for open access management, we have different territories. We do not have indexing on databases. We are struggling for indexing of the data, for archiving of the data. That is a major issue that we are facing all around in Asian publishing community. Now, here are a few solutions that we can do to fix the flaws of Asian digital scholarly communication system. There should be an immediate revision of OA publishing policies by the decision makers, policymakers. The procedure should be redefined according to the new DSC systems. That is, I would say that pandemic and the COVID-19 has push the DSC system and all the traditional publishing system to go online, go for open access. Adopting new state-of-the-art technologies, these technological solutions should be user-friendly, or I would say researcher or scientific friendly. Well-equipped and user-friendly online submission system, not only online submission system, but the system should facilitate and support the editorial procedures, peer review, preprint, even the post-publishing procedures, indexing and archiving of the content too. The very next option that we can consider is encourage not-for-profit national or local indexing databases. The total research that we are currently producing from Asian region is not accessible or is not widely disseminated on the web. So this is the basic issue with the current publications from Asia, that indexing of the data is not appropriate and not available for all of the journals, especially for the low income society journals. I would suggest for the policymakers to develop Asia's own national archiving body. It is our own, I think, role to support our Asian content, Asian publication industry and their published content and knowledge, to give them a national archiving body where we will recognize our own Asia's publications and research. The next one is capacity building program to train the researchers and institutions for DSC operation. No doubt the DSC system has been introduced like 15 to 20 years back, but only this pandemic situation has initiated all of the things forcefully, that things are the journal publishing system have to be with open access publishing. So there should be capacity building programs, trainings to educate the researchers and the editorial teams that are working for the panel to facilitate the DSC system. Now the last one is we should consider green OA option as it is experienced in developed countries for Asia too, in the very beginning steps, that we should go for green OA to ensure transparency, access and discoverability of the published content. Moving forward, here I would like to share a very few things that ACSC is doing to empower Asia's DSC system. ACSC has been playing its role since its birth, or since the council has been initiated, by engaging the scholarly community either in terms of conferences, webinars, regional events, regional trainings, or requested or customized workshops. By equipping with industry solution, assessing the problems of Asian community, ACSC has been providing technical solutions that are easy to use and budget friendly. The third is exchange of creative ideas with ACSC industry panel and the ACSC experts. Here I would like to share with you one of the initiative of ACSC industry tool that we call as state-of-the-art tool, Science One. This is an online submission system. And as I mentioned earlier in my slide, only online submission system will not be helpful for the OA publishing. The online submission system should be equipped with peer review system, web-based management system. The Science One suite is not only a submission or online submission, a manuscript submission system, it will also provide peer review system, web-based article management system, web-based subscription management system. And the most surprising thing is it is also connected with ACSC's reviewer bank. So along with the Science One suite, you will be having access to recognized reviewers of ACSC database that are available to review the literature. The third one is the very common and unique factor for Science One is once your data is published, the Science One team will be responsible to allocate the data, make it ready to be indexed in the major indexing databases. So the very trouble that we researchers feel, if I talk about personally, that it's not easy to generate XMLs and the formats for indexing databases, and hiring a technical or IT expert alone for a journal for the publishers, it creates a hustle. So we need smart tools, state of the art that a common man can operate. If I talk about Science One, I have been using it from the last 1.5 years, and it's so easy to operate from submission to post publication, even indexing, preprints, each and everything, and the hassle is managed. So India is the Asia, it needs such sort of solution that minimize time, minimize effort, and increase the productivity. Once more, Index One is an indexing database that is on ACSC is one of another solution, industry solution. This is an indexing and citation database of peer-reviewed literature. The purpose of Index One is not only to index Asian published data, but also to polish or equip the journals to get indexed in major indexing databases. If we talk about DOAJ, if we talk about Scopus, Web of Sciences, and other indexing databases too. Here, I would like to also share one of my recent experience. We should focus on our national archiving bodies and national indexing databases and discourage commercial platforms, commercial databases, that only then the Asian publishing community can survive the DSC system. Thank you. If you have any question, drop in question and answers, and furthermore, it will be discussed after the whole session.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mariam Sayap. And yes, of course, if there is question also common, please put in the Q&A. Yeah? Actually, she has already mentioned that in Asia, actually there is some weakness or flaws, in ASEAN DSC system, and you has also mentioned some weakness in DSC in ASEAN. That's why you propose some, proposal and also some solution. Would be interesting, of course, for all of us, And next, I would love to invite Pak Hindro Subagyo. Please, Pak Hindro, your time around 10 minutes. And I would like to invite you. Please, the time is yours, Pak Subagyo.
Thank you, Prof. Sri Adidingse, our moderator, and distinguished speaker, participant, organizing committee, and ladies and gentlemen. Let me okay, here's my screen. Okay, I will presentation about the journey of our mission to open science in Indonesia. Start from digital scholarly communications. As we know that Indonesia have struggled to catch up the standard of open science, especially open access in Indonesia. We have in this year we have top 3 of the countries with the most open science journals in Indonesia, and this is we can make because the ICT of development, development of IT, networking, and digitalization. This make happen of our development. Okay, let's the next. In Indonesia, we have ESSN registrations, and also Indonesia have top 3 of ESSN numbers after Australia, I think. And also in all of the ESSN numbers, there is a electronic ESSN. And since 2018, we have Indonesia have top 3 of countries that open the journals. You can see the next. This data from ROAD. ROAD is the system that built by ESSN International. ROAD have registered all the ESSN numbers that has standard of the ROAD that there is open access. And in 2018, Indonesia has the most journals that open and can access for public. The second is France, and there is the top 10. Also, another database we can see that from database DOAJ in 2019, and Indonesia also the second position for the open access of journal. From these 2 databases, we can see this with all the difficulties, Indonesia still have top 3 of the open journals. When we see the ESSN registration in Indonesia, actually I'm a director of ESSN Indonesia. In past 5 years, we have increase of the electronic ESSN. That the last in 21, we have 93% of ESSN registration is electronic. So they make opportunity to Indonesia to more open, because all of open access is also electronic, but not all of electronic is open access. So with this position, Indonesia have opportunity to make more open journal in Indonesia. When we look to growth of publication since 2015, the scientific article of Indonesia increased sharply to then also to overtake the Thailand, Singapore, Philippines, and Malaysia, when the past years Indonesia is below of them. We don't talk about quality yet, but this is important. Quality is important, but maybe this is the long struggle to make quality better in Indonesia. But with the quantity, Indonesia have make better publication in ASEAN. In the latest data, so Indonesia has published about 1,700 or more open access articles, and this is some friends say this the most bigger publication of articles open access. And last, in the number of scientific repository, when we talk repository in the world, we have many repository. Most of them is publication repository, articles publications. And in South Asia, there is all of country in Southeast Asia. Indonesia has about 148 repository, and the second position is Malaysia, 25 repository. There is the effort of Indonesia to make our results publications more open to public. Talking about institutional repository, from OpenDoar database, this OpenDoar database, from all the institutional repository, there's only few of them is data repository. Most of them is publication or articles repository. But we are starting to have more data repository in Indonesia. Now we have only have 2 data repository. First is U4, And the second, the bigger one is Rin from LIPI. Actually, I'm the director that manages this repository. Is also result of the collaboration of LIPI and our college, our network. In this room, we have Mr. Dr. Sapta, the leader of Good Science Indonesia, the Open Science Community Indonesia. And also we have a collaboration with Gute. In this room, we have Ms. Ivoni. We have a good and interesting collaboration in this year, and from last year, sorry. From this, why we Indonesia have the most top three of the open access in world, and also the top of in Southeast Asia, because it's not the short story. We built from a long time. We built the National Repository for Journal. If I'm not wrong, we started from 2019. And repository of data, we started from 2018 or 2017. Is ESGD, Garuda, that's explained by the previous speakers, and also RIN. And government also encouraged the publishing of the research result by incentive and ranking. We have a system that named Simlip Takmas, built and operate from 1916. And also we have Sinta from 1917. And Sinta also contribute to this development. And government have used Simlip Takmas and Sinta as a reference for giving research grant and other incentive. So maybe from this incentive and research grant, maybe the publication and open of result from research make more important for the researchers and also students in Indonesia. So we have see that the article of publication is increasingly sharply from 2015. We also encourage development of international repository from 2010 through University of School accreditation. Because if we look at accreditation for university, you can make a better point if you have a institutional repository. And next, we have also established the better standard journal management guideline, Arjuna, from 2018. We called it Arjuna. In this standard, we also have a better point if we open our journals and our repository. We also encourage online and open access journal framework. Government proposed the open journal system, OJS, to our publisher. So it make management of journal is better than we have done in the past. And next, we provide and facilitate the implementation of the open journal, open data, and open science movements. LIPI opens facilities that LIPI has. We open our HPG, high performance computing facilities. Also, we open RIN, repository, National Scientific Repository, Repository Ilmiah Nasional, we call it RIN. Also, we have Rujukan, collaborate with Ristek Dikti. We have RIN Archive, collaborate with INA Archive, Indonesian Archive Community. There is the leader is in this room, Mr. Daksata. We have also ELSA. This ELSA is like research services, include laboratories in LIPI. Then we make all these facilities open for public. This is the current status of our public facility. This facility is open to public. Public can use this freely. We have RIN National Repository for Research Data. This is free. Currently, we have a data set about 7,000 with file about 18,000, and have about 700 research data for source group that use this RIN facility. And also in HPG, for command computing, we have supercomputing services that can be used by students or other researchers from other institute freely. But maybe we have a queue in this services, long queue. Also, I have to wait August or September to use this facility, HPC facility. We have also ELSA, Layanan Science, the Science Services Electronic. This is laboratories and other research services. LIPI open 500 labs that include equipments for testing, for research. Also 50 machines, and also research mentoring for the university student. You can access at elsa.lipi.go.id. And we have also rujukan. Now we have 300 and more journals that freely use this hosting facility for OJS, Open Journal System. This is free. And the last is RIN Archive, which we developed together with Mr. Dr. Dapsapta and the friends. This is community-led digital archive for unpublished preprints. You can access it in rinarchive.ip.id. So what we have done, the last, we have some rule to encourage to push the researcher to open the result of their research. We established Indonesia 2019 flows on national knowledge system and technology that ensure the public can access and use the result of research. That also primary data and publication. And we have established Indonesia Research Roadmap for more open and collaborative research and innovation by consolidation our government research body to one body that is we call BRIN. But this still debate in Indonesia, but we have to patient to this movement, this progress. So what we will do? There's much of do that we have to work in this open science. We do not stop only at open access, but we have we want to more wider openness which is open science. Making LIPI as hub of research collaboration is also our ways to opening this wider open science. Then the last, we support the final draft or UNESCO recommendation of open science last week, released by UNESCO in for our review in this recommendation. And next is the diagram of the vision of LIPI that become to hub of research and innovation collaborations. We see that LIPI will open their research infrastructure, including the personnel, the human researcher, also network that LIPI has, and also software and hardware for research. This is open for public, researcher from university, student, researcher for institution of government, and also private research body. And if we look at the open science from the UNESCO's draft at 13 May 2021, open science is defined by whatever it is, too many aspects, and in the five pillars, we have open scientific knowledge, open science infrastructure, open science communication, open engagement, and also open dialogue. In Indonesia, we still struggle to implement the open science infrastructure, open science communication, including digital science communications, digital scholarly communication and open engagement. But the other we must have to do to catch up this. If we look at the open science knowledge, there is open access to scientific publication. This is our topic today. Open research data, metadata, and also open educational resources explained by Professor Alisabana. And also is open source code and akbar. But if we look at the last UNESCO draft, there is state that free access to scientific publication, open research data, educational resource, open source software and source code, and also open hardware. There is a long target that we have to be done in the future. But we have a small step. We have opened our scientific publications, not all, but most of them in Indonesia. And we make a step in open research data and also open educational resources. So I will do conclusions that we believe open science can make better future of our country, especially developing country like Indonesia. But Indonesia has much to do to catch up the movement of open science, including open access for digital scholarly communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pak Subagio. Pak Subagio has mentioned actually which has been done by Indonesia. Yeah, I believe that we had many years, before, but then catch up the the progress and progressing well. And you has mentioned that Indonesia now is in the top 3 of the countries with the most open access journal, with of course the government encouragement and a lot of incentive, and also actually in Indonesia, if you take a look on also research grant, I think almost all campus, also in Gajah University we have a lot research grant and also publication. World journal, actually, and that's also I think it's really quite a strong incentive. I believe, especially for the young researcher and also young lecturer, and of course a lot of journal and also repository, and then you has not just mentioned open access, but open, you call it open, what? Open
science.
Open what? Not just open access, but open
science.
Science, I think it's higher than just open access, and I don't know. It's really something. It's really challenging, even to make it open access is not easy, and then becoming open science would be really challenging. And yes, I would love to invite all of you if there is any question or comment, please. I don't think so. I see any question in the Q&A, and I haven't seen any raised hand here. Only one, but I don't know whether
Yes, I'm here, Bu.
Oh, okay. Do you want to say something, Pak Dasapa?
Yeah, thank you, Bu Moderator.
Okay.
My question is for Mariam. So earlier in your presentation, you said about DSC. DSC is a generic terms or some kind of specific brand or a specific workflow. Would you explain more on that? And also, I would like to thank you for your strong statement about encouraging to work with commercial entities. That was also the point that mentioned in the UNESCO recommendation for open science. So thank you for that. But please explain more on the DSG, please. Thank you.
Please, Prof. Please, Prof. Ms. Mariam
Hello.
Saya.
Yes, Dr. Erwin, just if you can repeat the question because I didn't get what exactly you want me to explain.
About the DSG, is it a specific tools or specific brand, or it's just a generic workflow on scholarly communications?
About ACSE.
DSC.
DSC.
Yeah, DSC.
It's a digital scholarly communication.
It's a generic terms of, or you are mentioning about a specific brand? DSC?
No, it's not about, actually, I just mentioned that digital scholarly communication about DSC. I take it as an abbreviation.
So it's a generic term?
Yes.
Okay. And it's related to the Sci1, the product that you explained?
The product is a Science One. It's an online submission system. It's a tool that is separate. So DSC system, I just took from the title of the webinar, that is a third series, Digital Scholarly Communication. And facilitating this system, Science One is a product of ACSC. It's an online submission system that is connected with 3 to 4 extensions, peer review, ACSC reviewer bank, along with it provides indexing, pre-printing service, archiving body service. So the journal or individual journal or the society journal, they do not have to recruit any of the IT experts or the external IT team. It will be managed by the Science One own team. From your pre-submission, publication, and post-publication. Because actually, if we talk about Asian publishing industry and the procedure starts after publishing. Anything else?
So you are speaking on behalf of Science One?
I am speaking on behalf of Asian Council of Science Editors. This is an organization based in Dubai, and this was one of the product of ACSC. Index One indexing database. This is another product of ACSC. So basically, I belong from Asian Council of Science Editors.
Okay, just get confused, but it's clear now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pak Dasapta. And I haven't seen any raised hand here. Please, if you have some question or would love to give some comment for the session 2.
Professor Siri, are you addressing me?
No, I mean, I asking for the, if there is any, okay, Prof. Abdullah Sam. Please, Pak Abdullah Sam.
Yes, sir. Okay, I just want to, I have already written in the chat. Thank you for giving the opportunity. Already written in the chat about this, the PKP's open journal system. So could Mariam talk a little bit about, are you aware of this, or could you mention the differences between the services in the PKP's OJS and the ACSC's Science One?
Yes. Actually, the major difference in as far as I have experience in the last 1.5 years, specifically during the pandemic, that major of the journals, they go for the online submission system. So the main issue is all of the online submission system, they do not provide you their hosting, your independent hosting plan. There is a difference that the hosting plan will be managed. You must be needing an IT full team, 2 or 3 persons that will handle your art metrics, your indexing procedures, your archiving body. But Science One, this is like, if I am not an IT expert, but still from publication to post-publication issues, I can manage. There is no need of any.
It's the same. It's the same with OJS.
But OJS needs a hosting plan. Once you install the OJS and you start using, you must be needing a external hosting plan to go with the server and go with the proceedings.
No, but you install it only once. You install it only once. Once you use the JAWS, then you don't have to do anything else. I mean.
Yes, but the hosting plan is on their server machine. Still, at any point, when you have your own product, your own ownership on the product, like if you're using OJS, so still the main hosting plan and server machine updation, each and everything, this has to be managed from your side. Each and everything, you need an IT expert. Being a researcher, it's difficult to understand the terms of art metrics, how to manage hosting, how to manage server, how to manage the updation of OJS and the related online submission systems.
Okay.
There must be an IT expert to deliver all of the things. So Science One, this has a unique feature that you should not be an IT expert to deal with Science One online submission system. You can just transfer your journal, like filling a form, go on the panel of a Science One, just like a Gmail suite. You can go for indexing, preprints, peer review. It's easy to use and user friendly, especially.
And it's also a free service. And it's also a free service.
It's a subscription-based service from Science One. If you request for this, we have to check with the department what they can offer regarding the region you are based in.
Okay.
So, Mariam, excuse me for interrupting. So, if I may explain more briefly, I think Science One is similar like Rujukan, the one that Pak Hendro explained. So we have this server and we install OJS. But the difference is with Science One, you have the server, you have the admins, and then you created some kind of another software, right? Specific software to in journal publishing, right? That also incorporate the peer reviewing system as well.
Yes.
Is that clear? Yes.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. So to use the service, we have to pay subscription.
No, but peer review service, peer review is available on OJS as well.
Currently,
so it should be on you just have to enable it.
The Science One system tool that, as you know, that Asian Council of Science Editors, it's a not-for-profit organization, and major of the tools that are free for the Asian publishing community. So this is a very last 1.5 years that we initiated Science One, and so far we have about 150 plus journals that are using this Science One server online submission system, and they're operating it like a technical person. The major flaw that we are receiving from different regions of Asia when this DSC system, online open access publishing system, has been raised, the procedure is that how to manage through online submission systems. Only publishing is not enough. We have to connect your data, your published content into an archiving body, plus make your data in a form that any of the indexing body, either it's DOAJ, it's Scopus, it's PubMed, they can extract your data. It is automatically connected. You do not have to upload your data anywhere. The Science One team will be responsible to connect your data with the indexing databases, major aggregates, and in the archiving bodies too. So with one solution, you can resolve a major of the issues that the journal management team is facing.
Yes, but even this is available on OJS, and OJS is used by more than 10,000 journals already.
Yes, but the point is, from my experience, that I have been getting this one question that OJS training aspect, hosting issues, and the server machine issues that Asian community is facing. So this is something different when you talk about only OJS, that the hosting plan, the server machine, the technical terms that the researchers alone do not understand. If we talk about being myself as a researcher, these are the technical terms only an IT person can understand and can help you monitor and go through the procedure. With Science One, only you can, being a researcher, you can manage whole out the procedure.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Ms. Mariam. And I would love to invite Pak Indra to give comment for all, at least the discussion now.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Prof. Sri Adinsi. Yes, in Indonesia we have also the similar services with Science One. We call this is Rujukan, the home of scientific journal. We have a server, we manage the server, we manage the IT aspect of the server, and the publisher just manage the management aspect. So this similar system that we have with Science One. Yeah. And then, but the indexing system is different. If we want to index the content of OJS, we rely to the mechanism of OSIPMH, the interoperability of the OJS, and we relay this to the indexing engine like Google or another harvesting system to index this. And in Rujukan, this is up to the publisher to manage this indexing, where how they manage the indexing setting, gitu ya. And the interesting thing in that Ms. Mariam said that the data of the publication is also be preserved in the Science One. Is it correct? This is the interesting things, because in Rujukan we still use this mechanism. We just give this choice to the publisher. If the data is connect to our data repository, that RIN we call it, or connect to another data preservation system or data indexing system. This maybe interesting that if we can copy this, we can follow this mechanism in our system Rujukan and RIN. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, time now is time.
Excuse me, Ibu Sri. There is one question for Mr. Hendro.
Okay, please.
That is from Dia, from University Erlangga, asking about Sherpa Romeo, one of repository management. I have managed all journal in University Erlangga and has to register our publisher to Sherpa, but until now we don't know our publisher has to accept it or not. Can we ask the problem with you? Maybe Lipi can help us.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Firnaya, Ms. Firnaya, about the question, and thank you, Ms. Dia, for the question. I have experience to communicate with Sherpa Romeo, management of Sherpa Romeo. I don't know what the problem is, but we can talk after this webinar. We can talk privately to help you to make your journal make up to the Sherpa Romeo. Thank you.
Okay. Any other?
We can discuss later with Dia. Thank you.
Dia, okay. Would be Japri then. Any other? I couldn't see any raise hand anymore. And here, I couldn't see it. Okay. I think we could close the second session, webinaria. I would love to thanks to Ibu Mariam Saya and also Pak Hendro Subagio with his present, and make the discussion interesting. And I believe that at least we got something, we learned something, the development of, in Asia. We understand that in Asia, the diversity is really big a lot, among countries. And of course, surprisingly that Indonesia, at least some years recently, has really, catch up the lag behind position. And yes, I think there is something, for Indonesia, especially for LIPI, which becoming hub of the development of open access and also open science. And I would like to, at least hoping that LIPI as the hub would be really play important role. Thank you very much for all of you. And I would love to return the time to Ibu Finaria. Please, Bu Finaria.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Adiningsi, for this moderating for session 2. But we'd like to invite you and also Dr. Aswin Sasongko for wrap up the session, session 1 and 2. And just, for a quick wrap up. And after that, we will continue for the other program. Please, Dr. Aswin Sasongko and Professor Adiningsi. Dr. Aswin? Or shall we ask Professor Adiningsi first?
Well, oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, so which one want to start first? Please do.
Please.
Shall I start first or?
Yes, please.
Okay. Now from the first session presentations and also the speech and so on, several things I would like to put here. Number one is that this open publications is useful for giving a particular publications to get worldwide access and also sharing to globally shared. It can be shown that when it is not in the open publication, the people who read it is so small. Then when you put it in the open publication, it become more and more, and many people will download the books or the papers. And that is sharing of information, as Ibu Armida mentioned in her first opening speech, sharing information to all. And it is very important, especially in the COVID, because as Bu Armida mentioned, especially during the COVID, sharing information about the COVID and so on is becoming more and more important. As I understand, many paper presentation or scientific paper on COVID, even in the commercial publications, is even given an open access, becoming free for people, because it is needed for all of us to do research on COVID-19 vaccination and so on and so on. So it is the information sharing on this field is very important. Now, secondly, is that this can be shown by the experience in Indonesia, sharing information from the publication that Dr. Barry mentioned about how that he managed the publication of biological or his field in this field from a commercial publication to open publications. And last one is very important and very interesting, is how as many people can get involved in the research activities and later, of course, in the publications. I think this is the short wrap up from the first session. And Bu Adi Ningsih to give the next one.
Okay, please. Thank you, Pak Aswin. Actually, in the second session, we have already, listening and also discussing some issue, and we understand ICT development have forced scholarly communication to be more digital and more open. Yeah, I think we learn it. I mean, we experience it. Yeah, especially of course during COVID, we use like this. I mean, webinar, discussion online, and also, even it's quite interesting when we cooperate and sharing. I mean, like when sharing article, when cooperate with one, and would be easier. Yeah, I mean, because now we suddenly becoming expert in the digitalizing. Yeah, and yes, of course. There are flow on current open access, yeah, especially in ASEAN publishing industry. I mean, it's on Miss Mariam, yeah, and it's really interesting that diverse R&D and development of R&D across ASEAN countries, yeah. Quite interesting that some ASEAN countries actually have, the level of R&D comparable to US and even European countries, yeah, like Japan, South Korea, yeah, and of course, digital scholarly communication. With the development of digitalization, especially also in developing countries like Indonesia, I believe also in India, in Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, yeah, experiencing some shifting, yeah, especially because of the pandemic, of course, yeah, and we need to, to shifting, yeah, because there is some shifting in the DSA, and we also need to adjust to develop such that the open access, and even in Indonesia has been discussing open science, yeah. And proposing by Ms. Mariam, yeah, like which owned by ASEAN, yeah, also countries in ASEAN, yeah, because usually we use more like Western publication, yeah, but now might be according to Ms. Mariam, we need nationality and ASEAN, yeah, and of course, like Indonesian case, Indra has mentioned that we work very hard to catch up the development of like research, R&D, even still compared to any other countries like behind in terms of like expenditure for R&D, and also the number of researchers compared to the society. But yeah, we have, Indonesia have make some significant progress, yeah. And actually also have planned to be at least in Asia also develop, and also the open access, open science with Ikuti, at least has been mentioned by Pak Hendro, would be love to become the hub, yeah. So yeah, I think that's what we have discussing until now, and I think I would love to return the time to Miss Finaria, Ibu Finaria. Please, Ibu Finaria.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Liningsi, and thank you to Dr. Aswin Sasongko too in assisting us throughout the webinar today, which is very helpful and fruitful as well. So for the next one, shall we ask Professor Myling Uy Gardiner to provide a kind of recommendations derived from the webinar series 1 to 3. And we would like to disseminate the recommendations to our stakeholders and then ASA members and other interested parties. So to just, nurture and the development of open access in the future. The time is yours, Professor Myling.
Okay. Share screen and then oh, saya kan belum taruh di sini. Oh, enggak, Ibu buka dulu. Gimana? Kamu dari sini deh. Sorry, I have to find my file first. Itu yang ini. Di download. Kan kamu bilang di download. Bukan di Google, apa namanya? Explorer dulu, bukan di download. Astaga, ya udah deh. Ini gimana hilanginnya? I'm sorry, I was looking for my file. To all the speakers, first of all, well, of course, to our president of IP, Professor Satrio Sumantri Brojonegoro, and from AASSA. And then, of course, the keynote speaker, Professor Armida Alishabana. Thank you to all of you and all the speakers for being here. Allow me to summarize, to read to you the recommendations that I found based on session 1 and 2 only, not on the third, because I didn't have the material at that time to prepare this one. I would like to read what I had written because otherwise it will take me too long. Okay, so even based on the first 2 of 3 sessions of the international webinar series on open access digital scientific communication, it's clear that the call for open access can be labeled as already having reached a global scale. As the powerful Northwestern scientific oligopolistic publishers have become increasingly more powerful in the market, it is advisable that individual educational and/or research institutions or even countries of the South, the less developed countries, join the global organizations, thereby strengthen their leverage against the all-powerful giant scientific publishers like Elsevier. Even scholars from less advantaged societies should have equal access to quality and the most up-to-date research results to enable them to contribute to the universal knowledge ecosystem. We have identified two issues of grave concern to call on other countries which have not yet done so. One, to join the movement and struggle to create equitable access, referred to as open access or open science. And two, combat predators and protect innocent scholars against financial abuse by predatory publishers. For this purpose, we shall rely on presentations of a number of speakers referred to below. On open access, no longer is it only the prerogative of rich country universities and research institutions that object to what UNESCO referred to as spectacular exploding costs set by the large scientific publishers. But the confrontation has already become a global movement. Scientific communication producing institutions from rich and developing societies have come together even to levels of country representations to create an open access environment. UNESCO has declared open access an essential element of progress. It strongly supports unrestricted open access to all its resources related to development issues, which are made available online for use free by all. On the role of UNESCO in the open access movement, this is what Professor Emeritus Sabda K. Shinwari noted as the organization's recommendations presented in Activities on Open Science through UNESCO. This is what it says. Emanating from the organization's supreme governing body, recommendations are intended to influence the development of national laws and practices. That should be emphasized. The working group drafted several recommendations, including international and regional science bodies to take leadership to mobilize science for disaster risk reduction partnerships for all stakeholders by reducing the knowledge gap, sharing values, and promoting the spirit of open science. Develop the delivery and trialing of innovation and science-based solutions to emerging global and regional challenges, drawing on the particular strength and qualities of each partner or stakeholder. Develop policies to avoid scientific misconduct, fabrication, falsification, or plagiarism, FFP, regulatory framework for equitable pricing, tools for monitoring and finding new funding ways or mechanisms to incentivize open science. The above recommendations were enriched by Mr. Hans Stolstrup, who spoke on towards a UNESCO recommendation on open science, building a global consensus. Below, we present important components of the second draft recommendation considerations on access to digital publications. The definition of open science. Open science is defined as an inclusive construct that combines various movements and practices aiming at to make scientific knowledge openly available, accessible, and reusable to everyone. 2, to increase scientific collaboration and sharing of information for the benefits of science and society, and to open a process of scientific knowledge creation, evaluation, and communication to societal actors beyond the traditional scientific community. Access to scientific knowledge and data should be as open as possible. I emphasize, access restrictions are only justifiable on the basis of 1, national security, 2, confidentiality, 3, privacy, and 4, protection of intellectual property rights, secret indigenous knowledge, and endangered species. What are the areas of action? 1, promoting common understanding of open science, associated benefits and challenges, as well as diverse paths to open science. 2, developing and enabling policy environment for open science. 3, investment in open science, infrastructure and services. 4, investing in human resources, education, digital literacy, and capacity building for open science. 5, fostering a culture of open science and alignment incentives for open science. 6, promoting innovative approaches for open science at different stages of the scientific process. 7, promoting international and multi-stakeholder cooperation in the context of open science and in view of reducing digital and knowledge gaps. The above attributes are accompanied by a note that in November of 2021, this year, later, the final text will be presented to the 41st session of the General Conference for consideration and adoption. And now I go to number 2 of the recommendation on predatory publishers. Sorry, it wasn't discussed at all today, but it was in previous session. The issue of predatory publishers was delivered by Professor Abdullah Shams bin Tariq in his speech on predatory practices in academic publishing and conferences, definition, extent, impact, root causes, and interventions. The speaker focused on a study conducted under the auspices of IAP. The Inter-Academy Partnership, or IAP, is a global partnership of over 140 national and regional merit-based academies of science, engineering, and medicine. Is conducting a study on combating predatory academic journals and conferences with the following objectives. 1, define predatory and unethical practices in academic journals and conferences, gauge their extent and impact, understand the root causes, examine efforts to date to combat predatory journals, publishers, and conferences around the world, and provide concrete recommendations for addressing the problem. The initial preliminary findings and conclusions below are revealing and worth attending to by institutions and countries around the world. The preliminary conclusions. Predatory journals and conferences are on the rise and becoming increasingly sophisticated. They are permeating many geographies, disciplines, and career stages. No one can afford to be complacent. Post-pandemic working practices may further exacerbate predatory practices. Distinguishing between predatory, poor quality, and unethical publishing practices is difficult. A spectrum approach is more appropriate. Raising awareness and understanding of predatory journals and conferences appears to be the primary intervention to prevent researchers falling prey to them. The commercial interests of the publishing industry are perceived to be a main challenge. To eliminate root causes, we need to go further and work together globally to, 1, revise conditions for recruitment and career progression. That is an important source that leads to all these predatory activities. regain ownership and control over the academic publishing, maybe some kind of global governance structure. Promote alternative economic models, open access publishing, for instance, like the one in Latin America, where academic publishing is fully not for profit, or that in high energy physics, where literally everything is open access as reprints and archives, and the journals are also open access through SCOAP3. Make open peer review the norm, so that sloppy or non-existent peer review is difficult. At this juncture, the Indonesian Academy of Sciences, IP, together with ASSA, and IAP, hereby recommends that even though the initiative to conduct the study was taken by IAP, a global partnership of over 140 national and regional academies of science, engineering, and medicine, the findings shall lead to recommendations affecting movements against all predatory scientific publishers in all sciences, i.e., including the social sciences and humanities. Jakarta, May 19, 2021. Thank you for the opportunity to present my recommendations.
Thank you so much, Professor Myling. So this is the draft of the recommendation that would be add on for series 3 later on. And then, so we are now at the end of this webinar series. So we're starting on the 31st of March, and then April, and then now the 19th of May. So thank you so much for everybody will join this meeting. But before, let me just invite once again our presidents that we appreciate the presence and also the existence in here from the beginning up to the end of the webinar. So the presidents of ASA, and then after that, the president of IP, could we invite them and then just say a few words, and then just, and also we would like to ask you if you would like to have suggestions in the continuation action of this webinar. So can we ask first for Professor Johan Kim? Thank you so much.
First of all, I would like to congratulate the speakers and the moderators and all the participants and all the staff behind this webinar series for their successful ending of this activity. As for the recommendations, Professor Myling's draft seems quite good in content up to the webinar 2. But I suggest, if you allow me to circulate this draft to the among the speakers and moderators and organizers, and solicit their opinion to if there are any items to revise, to correct, or to add. Okay, and then you form a committee of 3 to 5 people to refine the format and the contents, okay, incorporating the opinions of the participants. Then it will be much better, I think, okay? And then after you draft the final draft, after you finish your final draft, please send it to us, to the secretariat, so that we can look it over, okay?
Sure.
And all these wrap-up things must be done before the 20th of June, including preparation of proceedings. Okay, and also we need narrative report and also the financial report to accompany your report to us, because the ASA is obligated to present our activity report by the end of June 30th to the IAP. Okay, so please keep the deadline June 20. And in regard to the format of the the proceedings or things like that, and other deliverables, printed matters, the IAP recently sent us the format to follow. Okay, so we'll let you know, and I'll instruct the Secretary of Staff to send it to you early next week. Okay, right? That's all. Okay, and again, thank you very much. Okay.
Yes. Thank you so much, Professor Yohan Kim. So shall we invite Professor Satrio Brojonegoro for the closing of this webinar?
Okay, thank you, Ibu Finaria, distinguished speakers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and participants. We eventually arrived to the end of this 3 series of webinars talking about the digital scholarly communication. I would like to reinforce again what has been described by Professor Melling, that open science is important, and also the digital scholarly communication is also important. Why important? This is for the betterment of a human being. Open science has to be benefited for the betterment of human being. It means that we have to make sure that the data is reliable. So not only the number is okay, but quality is more important. So the data has to be reliable. State of the art of scientific development also important, and the excellence in scientific culture also important. So we have to make sure that for the future we have this open science which provide the reliable data, state of the art of development of scientific development, and the excellence in scientific culture. Yeah, we have to prevent what happened with the predatory journal that may create disaster for human beings, especially during COVID-19 pandemic now. Yeah, the bad information published by predatory journal may create to the bad policy made by the leaders of the country in combating COVID-19. So you can imagine what happened with us if the data or information is really bad and not supposed to be disseminated to people. So thank you very much for all the speakers, moderators, participants, the keynote speakers. And to follow up what Professor Yohan Kim mentioned, I think we, instead of proceeding, I think we should publish also the policy brief. Okay, that the policy brief should be disseminated to the policymakers so that we can have the impact of these 3 webinars, the importance of the quality of the open science for the betterment of human being. So to fulfill the administrative requirement, we follow what ASA and IAP has designed, but also in top of that, we like to publish the policy brief, yeah, with the same cycle of interaction. So circulate among the members or the speakers, and then we refine and we come up with the strong statement in our policy brief. This we hope that we can contribute something to our community, at least in Asia, so that we can have a breakthrough in trying to improve the open science that benefit for human being for the future. Again, thank you very much for all your participation, your concern, and your contribution. And we look forward to having the report, the proceedings, and the policy briefs. And also in the future, we hope that we can conduct the follow-up webinars after we publish and we fulfill all the requirement of this webinar. Thank you again for all of you. Stay safe and healthy. Hope to see you again in the near future. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you, professors. And thank you all participants of this webinar. So a very good afternoon to you all. I wish you all stay safe and also healthy always. And with the big hope that COVID-19 pandemic can be vanished very soon. We don't know when, but very soon. And with the good wish that we could make a real face-to-face seminar in the future. And we would like to make sure to our ASA president that we will fulfill all the criteria or all the inquiries needed very soon. Thank you so much to you all, and have a very good afternoon.
Great job, Finari.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.